advisors at Wye Valley Trust. When I'm showing my slides, I can't see who's in the room or any hands up. So I just want to introduce Kirsty, if that's okay.
Yeah, two Kirstys, I'm afraid. Easy to remember. Yeah, so I'm in the partnership team and I will just be supporting and checking the chat. And so if you have any questions, please do ask. We will come to the questions at the end. If you want me to share the slides and I haven't got your email address already, pop it into the chat also. I've put my email in there so you can email us with any questions after the event also. Handing back over to you.
Thank you very much. And I think I'm hoping Leanne Rees is here as well. And I can't see, but
I
Leanne
am.
is.
I am.
Ah,
I'm
there we
here.
are. Would you mind
I'm here.
introducing yourself, Leanne?
My name's Leanne Rees. I'm specialist safeguarding nurse advisor with the MASH team and Wye Valley Trust. I work alongside Kirsty and have been. I haven't done any of the hard work really. I've just read a lot of things and supported Kirsty doing this. Keep me safe with dogs.
And you're the owner of an XL Bully as well, aren't you?
I am, yes. She I didn't get her as an XL bully. She is a Staffordshire Bull Terrier American Bulldog cross, and she met some of the requirements, and she looks quite tiny compared to what you think of as an XL bully. But I think it's worth remembering that the dangerous dogs legislation around XL bullies isn't just about XL bullies. It's about bulldog crosses that met some of the criteria as well. And we went on quite a journey with ours. It broke our hearts at times, but we've kind of got used to it now, and so has she. But I would show you her, but she's wandered off somewhere, so I won't.
Thank you, Leanne. Yeah, so we're here today to talk about keeping safe when I'm with dogs. So this is little Jasper on one of my late pugs, who didn't have any. Well, in fact, he had one tooth on the other side of his mouth, which is why his tongue used to loll out of his mouth. He would have just given you a bit of a hard suck. But actually, the guidance from this today says, regardless whether teeth or not, you shouldn't be leaving any children with any dogs, as much as we may feel they were safe. But I'll come on to that throughout the presentation. So the agenda today, this is what we're looking at. So it all started with an audit I did at Wye Valley Trust. So I'll talk about that audit, I'll talk about the findings, I'll talk about the local and the national picture. We'll talk about the Dangerous Dogs Act. I'll revisit the Keep Me Safe when I'm sleeping and when I'm crying. And we'll talk about Keep Me Safe when I'm with dogs. And also I'll talk a little bit about the risk assessment that's on its way. That's not yet published, but will be on the website with the rest of the guidance soon. So the dog bites audit that I did. So this followed a thermal injuries audit I did a couple of years ago, and we found at that time that it would actually be really beneficial to explore dog bites. But the one thing we were looking at was a professional curiosity and the safeguarding actions taken at Wye Valley Trust. And not just when children were presenting, say, in ED, an emergency department, but also we have a process within Wye Valley Trust where all the discharge forms are sent to the public health nurses. So either the health visitors for the preschoolers and school nurses for school age children. And so we were looking at the safeguarding actions taken by both those sets of practitioners. We were looking at the processes when children were presenting with dog bites. We were looking at our policy to assess compliance. We were also looking at the threshold guidance. So in Hereford, that's called the Right Help, Right Time. I think it's just called the threshold document in Worcester, but I imagine they're pretty similar across the UK. The other thing I looked at as part of the audit was national and local data as well. There have been a number of catastrophic dog attacks on children and adults in the UK reported in the media in recent years. I mean, every week it feels like there's another fatality. And obviously, dogs can be a really important part of a healthy family life. The increase in dog bites the injuries and the deaths needs to be better understood. And we felt that preventative measures need to be explored. So, you know, death of a child from a dog bite is rare, but serious injuries more common. We haven't had any fatalities in Herefordshire, but there have been, I believe, a couple of fatalities in Worcester, and certainly the learning from one of those rapid reviews is included in here. So the national data. So the Office of National Statistics show that, and I'll show the increase on the next slide, but an increase year on year. And this matches the police data. So West Mercia Police report an increase of 65% in dog bites. 29% of adults have a dog in the UK. There's 11 million dogs living in homes in the UK. So there are 1,001 admissions to hospital of children under 10 to hospital with dog bites in 2023, and there were 6 child deaths between 2019 and 22. In 2019, I think there were only 2 deaths by dog bites for adults and children, 3 in 20, and then I think in 2023 there were 19 deaths. Unfortunately, the official figures don't break down the number of attacks or deaths by type of dog. That would be really, really useful. So the National Child Mortality Database. So when a child dies, then we have for those that don't know, I'm not totally familiar on the process, but what I understand is when a child dies and there will be a review, and that's called a child death overview review. So CDOP, there's a panel that discusses the case, and they look at modifiable learning, anything that we could potentially impact as professionals. And the other thing is that whenever any child dies and they're discussed locally, that's all fed into the National Child Mortality Database as well. And they provide a report on that every few years. So I've got the findings from that to share today. So this is the Office of National Statistics, their data. We haven't got the 2024 data yet. It's not yet available. But like you can see, they've increased significantly. This chart here, it's data from Statistica, and the first column shows, it's not very easy to see, but the first column shows 1,100 children under 9 who attended hospital in the year 22 to 23 in that 12-month period. The next column shows there were 781 10 to 19-year-olds. The highest number seen was in the 50 to 59-year-olds. 1,569, and we talked about this in the Task and Finish group, and we couldn't really work out why that number was. Again, Kirsty would be bored of hearing me say this, but I'm probably disproportionately. I've got 5 dogs, and I'm in that age group. But none of I don't think any of mine are particularly dangerous. But basically what this graph shows is that we had 2,000 avoidable children's hospital admissions in that period. So not only is this, a significant cost to the NHS, but there's 2,000 preventable child injuries. So the Dangerous Dogs Act. So this is very controversial with many differing views. But basically it's against the law to own certain types of dog. I'll show these I've got some images on the next slide, but these are Pit Bull Terriers, Japanese Tosa, Doggo Argentina, Filo Brasileiro, and XL Bullies are now banned in England and Wales, unless the owner has an exemption certificate obtained from DEFRA. I think one of the most important things about the Dangerous Dogs Act is that in 2014, there was a change to it, and it basically says that all dog owners should be responsible for their dog's behaviour with other people and animals. Whether you own a large breed or a tiny one, and however placid and friendly your dog is, the Dangerous Dog Act applies to you. So XL bullies were added to this list following the breed being disproportionately involved in a number of fatalities. So these images show the dogs. So correct me if I'm wrong, Leanne, but actually we shouldn't be seeing any of these dogs now. So the ban's been in place for a number of years, which means that, you know, if they're not being bred, they shouldn't be existing anymore. But banned dogs should be fitted with a microchip. They should be neutered. They should be kept on a lead and muzzled in public spaces and kept in a secure space. Therefore, that means that banned dogs can be kept, you know, in the home without any of those, without a muzzle.
As far as I know, Kirsty, there might still be some pit bull terriers around, but there shouldn't be any of the others.
My little pugs up. Yeah, so potentially there may be some pit bulls in the community that would, you know, illegally. Yeah, so the others shouldn't be there apart from the XL bullies. You know, as sort of practitioners working in the community, whether that be across health, social care, please, you know, we can't be expected to know what all the banned dogs are. But basically, these dogs are the ones that could cause greatest harm. And actually, in the audit I did, the majority of dogs weren't actually documented what type of breed they were. The ones that were identified were mostly terrier dogs. I think the most important thing is that we're professionally curious about what's happened and the context of the bite. So the Dangerous Dogs Act effectiveness. So basically it should prohibit all dogs being dangerously out of control. The identification of breed is subjective. The fatal dog attacks continue. There's been a lot of opposition to the Act. Certainly the Dogs Trust and the RSPCA and I think the British Veterinary Association all opposed it. And what the British Veterinary Association say, canine aggression and dog biting incidents are complex public health and social issues which will require multifactorial prevention strategies. We need to be looking at the root cause of aggressive behaviour in dogs, you know, improved breeding, dog control regulations and promoting responsible dog ownership. One of the rapid reviews from the child death in Worcester was for the local authority, for the council there to be more tenacious in identifying people breeding dogs who haven't registered. So I think if your dog has more than one litter, so 2 or more, then I believe they should be registering with the council. So my audit, so it was a Microsoft Office form. The questions included the type of bite or sting. It was quite difficult because of the way ED code things. But we looked at the breed, where the child was first presented, whether there was adequate professional curiosity, whether a MARF, that's a multi-agency referral form into Children's Services, was referred in, who the child attended with, whether the voice of the child was captured, whether alerts were checked, and whether the public health nurses received the discharge. So our team did it just because we had some input from the emergency department team to develop the audit questionnaire, but our team has access to all the sort of electronic patient record systems. So we did it amongst our team. We looked at 31 cases. There were a total of 90 in the time frame, so we looked at 34% of them. We also looked at the onwards referral processes. For example, when the public health nurses, all the children's community nurses reviewed those forms and if safeguarding was considered. What we found was that 90% of the attendances came to ED. 70% of them were dog bites. There was a number of others. I think we had one that was scabies, we had a bat, and we had a snake bite. The type of dog was only recorded in 12.
Sorry, what does ED mean?
Emergency department, sorry.
Okay.
Who the child attended with was 94%. Whether the referral had gone into Children's Services, there was only there was any one, and whether banned breeds were discussed. There was one really interesting observation. One of the audits that I did, or two of the audits I did seemed to be about the same dog. So this child had been bitten by a dog that was subsequently rehomed, and the names and the addresses all matched for it being the same dog. So basically, what the audit told us around that one was that both these bites should have been avoidable. The second dog bite, the dog was euthanized after that, but both those bites were avoidable. And really, a referral to police, potentially social care, might have been appropriate first presentation. So there was only one MARF submitted out of 31. But when we looked at them, we felt that there were two opportunities to offer support through a MARF. These didn't happen. But fortunately, other agencies submitted those referrals. So I think the child went into school one of the following days and talked about the dog bite, and then the school submitted a referral. And this actually matched. There was an audit completed at Birmingham Children's Hospital. It's about 10 years ago now, but they looked at dog bites and they looked at the onward referrals. And what they found was that there was a lower number of the nurses and doctors in the emergency department who were referring into children's social care than the paediatric liaison team who review the records afterwards. So I guess the paediatric liaison team were going to have that sort of safeguarding hat on more so. And I guess that, for many, many reasons, they're going to have, that's their speciality, isn't it? So I guess they're going to be more professionally curious and, to submit those referrals afterwards. Whereas the emergency department, we know how busy they are. And there wasn't any discussion or any documentation regarding banned breeds in any of them. Findings continued. So safeguarding alerts were checked in most cases. That's 88%. We have something called CPIS, Child Protection Information System, which is now used in 100% of areas in the UK. And what that is, it's a way of, if a child's on a child protection plan or is looked after by a local authority or has been in the last year, then they'll have an alert on their NHS spine record. So when a child comes to ED, for example, to the emergency department, they have a process there where they check whether a child's, has an alert. So actually, it was 88% is pretty good of the alerts were checkable. The quilted check questions were asked thoroughly in 90% of the cases. So the quilted questions are when a child comes to ED, and there's a set series of questions that include things like, is there any delay in presentation? Does the injury match the explanation? So they're basically safeguarding questions. And they were asked in 90% of the cases. And I think it would have been higher. We only asked the quilted questions for children who were below 16 and below. So I think one of the children in the audit was 17, so it wouldn't have been applicable to them. 64% of children were spoken to directly, where it would have been appropriate. The voice of the child was captured in 35% of the cases audited, and 2 of the discharges weren't received by the public health nurses. One was received by the GP, but not the public health nurse. But actually, the one that had been received by the GP had very limited information within it, which prevent the GP from making any sort of useful assessment. The public health nurses considered safeguarding in only 23% of the cases. I'm confident this would have been much higher, but it wasn't documented. Public health nursing team, they did receive the discharge form in most cases, and we had some that were out of county. So we found that there was only adequate professional curiosity in 38%. And like I said already, a safeguarding concern was only highlighted in 3 cases and only 1 MARF submitted. So the analysis of this Dog bites are always preventable, so more professional curiosity is needed. We compared the findings with this audit to the thermal injuries audit completed 2 years previously. And interestingly, safeguarding alerts being checked is exactly the same, with 88% being checked appropriately. And a high percentage of the charge attended being who they were attended would be recorded. I think 60. Yeah, so the findings match when children were spoken to directly, that matched previous audit, but there was a significant decline in the voice of the child being captured. 70% last audit and 35 this time. And there was also a decline in the public health nursing documentation of consideration of safeguarding, 66% previously and only 20%. So there's been there has been a significant decline in that professional curiosity. So this led me to do a literature review. So there was a Welsh child death review in 2014, and this review was looking into the deaths of children from dog bites. And it concluded that the single most effective bit of advice to share with families is to never leave a baby or a young child unsupervised with a dog, even for a moment, no matter how well you know that dog. Bear with me. This report found that most of the dog injuries occurred in the more deprived geographical areas, and that the particular breed wasn't a really good indicator of risk, but the dog's history and the context of the injury. The dogs involved were usually known to the child's family, but they weren't necessarily owned by the family. So for those that don't work for the NHS, the NICE guidelines stand for the National Institute for Clinical Excellence. Their guidelines suggest that if an animal has bitten a child, practitioners should be considering the possibility of poor parenting and supervision. It suggests local policy should be considered to assess a risk. And we have no specific policies at Wye Valley Trust, which is why this whole strategy is being developed. I've already talked about the audit at Birmingham Children's Hospital, and the I'm just scrolling down. So there've been I've talked a little bit about the death of children due to traumatic incidents. That's from the Child Death Overview Panel. There were 4 child safeguarding practice reviews in the last 10 years relate to dogs. And one of those reviews led me to review a number of risk assessment tools developed and used by other local authorities. And yeah, most dog attacks occur in the home environment, when dogs who are categorised as dangerous aren't actually required to be muzzled anyway. Yeah, and the National Child Mortality Database, so their findings, they published a report looking at, there were 6 child fatalities in the time frame from 2019 to 22, and they developed some guidelines which are included in the Keep Me Safe campaign, which later on I'll show you where to find them. Yeah, and that review concluded that close supervision is always key to ensuring dogs and children can live safely together. So I'm going to talk about now the child safeguarding practice reviews. So the first one was in Doncaster, and what was quite interesting is the last webinar we did, there was somebody from Doncaster who said they've had a sort of disproportionate number of dog attacks on children there, and they're looking to develop some multi-agency guidance. So this review looked at the circumstances around the death of a 12-day-old baby. It was by his father's dog, and it was looking at the multi-agency involvement. So the review identified several issues with recognition of neglect, responses to parental mental health and domestic abuse, and states that professionals were more concerned about the impact of the health and hygiene from the dog rather than the risk of physical injury. This review was aware that Doncaster had a multi-agency dangerous dog risk assessment, but this hadn't been utilised. And it was noted that there was insufficient awareness of this guidance by partner agencies. And this review recommended that all pre-birth assessments should include an assessment of risk, whether there are dogs that may pose a risk to children in the home. And with this particular case, it was known that the dog had bitten an older sibling 5 months previously, and the parents had taken the older child to the GPs to have that dog bite assessed, but they told the GP the dog was a stray, so the GP didn't refer into MASH or to the police. And what the learning review found that the GPs hadn't documented sort of children's social care involvement, so it wasn't easily visible to the GP, and if it had been, then it might have sort of made them more professional curious, and make them think about referring on. Second child safeguarding practice review was Lucy, 20-month-old baby who sustained life-changing injuries whilst in her dad's home with her 3-year-old brother whilst they were unsupervised with his dog. There was a history of neglect. The children have been subject to child protection planning. There was evidence of criminality, domestic abuse, and substance misuse. At the time of the dog attack, the children were placed on a care order with mother. There was a restraining order and a non-molestation order in place to protect mum and the children from father, but professionals supporting the family didn't fully understand these and how information held by agencies could support with their enforcement. So there was disguised compliance from parents. Both said they weren't in a relationship, but professionals suspected they were. The integrated offender manager and the health visitor weren't aware of how information held by each agency would support each other's actions, and so that wasn't shared. And yeah, there appears to be sort of an inaccurate view from professionals involved that whilst the children were no longer on a child protection plan, but they were on a care order and placed with mum, that there were no further risks involved because they weren't on a child protection plan. That's all transferable learning for us as well. So the third child practice safeguarding review, the death of a 20-day-old baby following assault by a family dog. Baby was being looked after by father at the time of the incident, so there's a bit of a pattern here, isn't there? Father at the time of the incident was asleep. He'd been drinking alcohol, and the baby was the youngest of 4 children. Father had long-term alcohol and drug dependency, which just wasn't known by agencies. Mother usually cared for the baby, and the family had been known for children's social care for one incident in the past. The learning from this included, that many families carry vulnerabilities and pressures that we just don't know about, which may increase the risk. We need to help families to think about the unthinkable risks that may be posed by families' pets. And there was a real need, this review found, to educate both parents about the risk of alcohol and the safe care of children. And so one of the recommendations was delivering a public awareness campaign about the risk to babies and children as a result of parental use of alcohol. I think this really makes me think, we need to think family, and what that means is every family is unique, and sometimes the focus too much is on one carer, one parent, and we need to be looking at the risks outside that primary home. I think the rapid review they had in Worcestershire, I think if not one, possibly 2 of them were in grandparents' care. So we always need to think about the extended family and where else children may be spending time. So I pulled out all the vulnerabilities that were identified in not only the child practice learning reviews, but also the Welsh report, and I made myself a little graph, and these are what I found. So neglect was a common theme, parental substance misuse, poor parental mental health, families who experience high levels of aggression and domestic tensions, and all these are more likely to trigger excitement and possible attacks by dogs. These families may be less likely to appreciate and anticipate the risks. they may be less likely to take necessary precautions, may be less likely to guarantee the safety of the most vulnerable youngsters, and very small young children living in these chaotic and dysfunctional families are likely to be more vulnerable. And these, banned, dangerous, powerful dogs are more likely to inflict the most serious injuries. And all these findings and these vulnerabilities you will find in the Keep Me Safe guidance. I was wondering, Kirsty, would you be able to put, if you probably have it already, can you put the web address
Link.
in there?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
please.
in there. Yeah.
Okay, great. So you'll find the link to the guidance in the chat. So as part of this, I did this audit, and then I presented my findings, and we have like an NHS Safeguarding Children Leads meeting every couple of months, and I was talking about it at one of these meetings, and it was decided, we were talking about what we could do to further strengthen, our safeguarding practice around dog bites. So that led to Worcester had already, Sam Dixon and her team had already done quite a lot of work around dog bites, and we sort of fine-tuned the ones they had as a task and finish group. We came up with these prompts, and these prompts have been shared with the ED department. So if a child turns up at Worcester ED, then they will be asking all these questions, and the same with Wye Valley Trust. Eventually, I'm having a few problems with that, but soon they'll be added to their electronic record system. So I won't read through all those, but it's it's looking at the context of the dog bite. So then, I was also thinking, we need to see where this fits on the right help, right time on the threshold document. So, potentially at the very least, it could be, an offer to refer the family in for some early help, potentially. But actually, if you've got more significant concerns, then, it may be a referral into children's social care. So, the main messages from the audit were all dog bites are preventable, never leave a baby or child unattended with any dog, be curious, think family, what are the risks outside the immediate home, use these prompts, the risk assessments and the guidance, which is just published now. And obviously we've got the Keep Me Safe launch as well. So the revised Working Together 2023 suggests we need to continue to strengthen the multi-agency response to deliver effective, consistent approaches to get the best outcomes for children and families. This is why we've developed the Keep Me Safe around dogs and all the different the risk assessment to support that. It's always really important to think about, we only know, I always think of families as like, all of our families is like being a jigsaw. So we always need to think about, we only know one part of that jigsaw often, don't we? Especially, for example, in the emergency department. Going on to the Keep Me Safe. So the Keep Me Safe vision. So this was developed out of learning that was identified across various learning reviews across Hereford and Worcester, not only child practice learning reviews, but also from CDOP as well. And they noticed there had been an increase in abusive head trauma. And in particular, this was around the time of the COVID lockdown. So the Hereford and Worcester CDOP annual reviews looked at what the modifiable factors were, and they identified, so Louise was one of the reviews, and which I was a health visitor for, actually, sadly, but she was a victim of abusive head trauma due to being shaken. So following this, and there was also at that time there was a number of babies who died from sudden infant death, and so they thought, what are the modifiable features here? And so they developed the Keep Me Safe strategy, and It's a strategy that it's for practitioners across Hereford and Worcester, regardless of whether you work in health, social care, police. But really what it's about providing that consistent message and to reduce the number of children seriously injured or die. So yeah, so far we've had 2 strands so far were keep me safe when I'm sleeping. So that was about, I'll come on to it in a few more minutes in a couple of slides, but keep me safe when I'm sleeping and keep me safe when I'm crying. And it's planned that the sort of the strapline for the strategy, keep me safe, could be used for all sorts of things, like keep me safe when I'm with dogs, maybe keep me safe when, you know, if I'm being bullied, keep me safe around water, for example. So every child who's been born over the last few years there will be a QR code in their Red Book, and that will take them to the website that we've got in the chat. There've also been, you know, posters and key rings shared. So the first keep me safe strategy was keep me safe when I'm sleeping. This focused on the delivery of the Lullaby Trust guidance. So the Lullaby Trust are basically the sort of national experts on safe sleep, and their advice is babies should all lie on their back. So lie baby on their back, keep their cot clear, use a firm, flat, waterproof mattress, keep baby smoke free, avoid letting your baby get too hot, keep your baby in the same room as you, at least for the first 6 months. And so, you know, in the past, it's just been sort of predominantly health visitors, midwives who've shared that message, but now it's encouraged that, you know, all partner agencies will share that message and reinforce it. The next strategy was keep me safe when I'm crying. So this was, obviously created to support practitioners and families where crying is a concern. And the focus of this was from the ICON guidance. I don't know. So ICON again is another sort of public health strategy that predominantly in the past has been delivered by health, midwives, GPs, health visitor. But basically what it is, so if you were to Google ICON, well actually the website will take you there, the link. Basically what the ICON message is, try comfort methods and ensure there's nothing wrong with your baby. It's okay to leave your baby in a safe place and walk away. After a few minutes, go back and check the baby. Again, once you're calm, just pause. Never shake a baby. It can cause serious harm or death. And yeah, so there are various touch points. The antenatal period, you know, the postnatal period, by, like I said before, the midwives, health visitors and GPs, but actually, you know, it's a message that could be shared by our partners as well. So, you know, it could be police, could be social care. If you're doing a home visit and there are concerns with a crying baby. So, which brings us to keep me safe when I'm with dogs. So the key message with this is never leave a child alone with any dog, even for a moment. All dog bites are preventable. Close supervision is key to ensuring dogs and children can live together safely. And the importance of understanding your dog's language. Never allow your child to approach an animal they don't know. And all dogs have the potential to bite. You know, and I think it's also really important to consider the safety of professionals at home visits too. You know, it's absolutely okay to ask for pets to be placed safely away. And like I said, this guidance is based, you know, on all the evidence pulled from the practice reviews, the expert guidance, and including the animal welfare charities. That's what it looks like if anybody hasn't managed to join the link. Yeah, and it also includes all the vulnerabilities we've talked about. It includes the Think Family message. It talks about the statistics, the legislation, and the intervention resources. So some of the resources that are linked there, they were developed as a sort of amalgamation of the Dogs Trust, DEFRA. I can't remember what I think the trigger times one might be, but out of the child death overview panel report, there was this joined up approach by the different expert animal charities, and they developed some of the guidance, and the links to those are on the pages. So basically, it's a really simple message. Just never leave a baby or child unsupervised with a dog, even for a moment, no matter how well you know that dog. As part of this as well, we've developed a risk assessment tool, which has just been, my colleagues just sent it to the graphic designers to see if we can make it a bit prettier than what my skills allow. But basically, we're looking at who owns the dog, any behavioural issues known, any previous owners, the dog being rehomed, any reports of aggression, does the dog have a safe space to eat and sleep, and are the children taught how to behave safely around the dogs, and is a safeguarding referral to children's services and or police required. So as part of this risk assessment, we had when it's finally published, which hopefully will be in a few weeks, it will be added to the website. But there are links there to the police, and actually it's been developed. We did it in partnership with police, social care, and also education. So there are details there for Hereford and Worcester practitioners how to refer, whether it be to social care or to the police. And the police were very much of the opinion that you never know when there's a pattern. If a child's been bitten in the community, then they prefer us to refer in on the non-urgent sort of portal on the internet. So just because there may be a pattern of that dog being dangerously out of control. And then you'll see we've got these resources here, and you'll find these as well on the website and via the QR code. And then there's my references, which if you want them, they obviously at the back of this PowerPoint presentation, and they will be shared. And that is me. Jen, has anybody got any questions? It's really simple.